In Antarctica, there's a massive slab of ice called the Thwaites Glacier, better known by its more ominous nickname, the Doomsday Glacier. It's part of the West Antarctic ice sheet's so-called weak underbelly, and scientists have been warning for years that if this thing collapses, it could drag a whole chunk of Antarctica down with it. That would mean a massive rise in sea levels, enough to wipe out entire coastal cities and force millions from their homes. Thwaites and the nearby Pine Island Glacier could both collapse. The most feared scenario is what's called marine cliff ice instability, or MICI. Basically, if a glacier's ice shelf collapses, it can expose super tall cliffs of ice that aren't able to support their own weight, and then things just start to fall apart. But here is some good news. A new study came out saying that that exact nightmare might not happen, at least not this century. According to Matthew Morlahem, professor at the Department of Earth Sciences at Dartmouth, the glacier remains, quote, fairly stable, at least through 2100, and that even if it starts to collapse in about 50 years, the ice cliffs won't be tall enough to trigger a sudden runaway collapse. The glacier is still in retreat, but Morlahem added, quote, it'll go not as rapidly as one scenario suggested. Still, he also warned, this doesn't mean Thwaites is stable. It's losing mass, ocean currents are thinning it from below, and you can't just replace a glacier like that. And we're not done talking about this Doomsday Glacier just yet, because some scientists have some other thoughts about it. Dr. Rob Larder from the British Antarctic Survey says Thwaites has been, quote, retreating for more than 80 years, accelerating considerably over the past 30 years, and added that our findings indicate it is set to retreat further and faster, end quote. Right now, this glacier and the surrounding area are responsible for a big chunk of global sea level rise, which is about 4.6 millimeters every year. That may not sound like a lot, but if the whole glacier collapses, we're looking at sea levels rising by 3.3 meters, and that would mean flooding all over the globe. Coastlines would disappear, and we'd have huge spikes in storms. Places like Portsmouth, Peterborough, Hull, and large parts of London could be underwater, and that's just in the UK. Computer models now say we could see major or total ice loss from the West Antarctic ice sheet by the 23rd century. Dr. Ted Scambos from the University of Colorado says it's concerning that the latest computer models predict continuing ice loss that will accelerate through the 22nd century and could lead to a widespread collapse in the 23rd. He also added that, quote, immediate and sustained climate intervention will have a positive effect, but a delayed one. Deep in southwest Bolivia, 300 miles off the coast of Oregon and nearly a mile underwater, is what's called the Axial Seamount, this massive submarine volcano that scientists say could erupt any day now. Last time it erupted was in 2015. Before that, 2011 and 1998. Now, it's far enough from land that people aren't really in any immediate danger, but the volcano has reshaped the ocean floor, sometimes pretty dramatically. The 2015 eruption dropped the ocean bottom by nearly 8 feet and messed with hydrothermal vent fields, which are these deep sea cracks where superheated water escapes from beneath the Earth's crust. Now, researchers say the volcano is starting to show some warning signs. The seafloor around it is inflating, seismic activity is increasing, and all of it looks a lot like what happened before the last 3 eruptions. That means it could really erupt any day now, if the hypothesis is correct. End quote. One of Mexico's ancient pyramids just collapsed under a year ago, and some locals are worried that this could be a very bad omen. The pyramid was built by the Parapecha civilization, which ruled the Michoacan region before the Spanish arrived in 1530. These pyramids have been standing for about 1,000 years, but after a stretch of pretty harsh weather, one of the pyramid bases, known as the south base, gave way. So basically, the dry spell weakened it, then the downpour finished the job. So now conservation teams are trying to figure out how to reinforce and repair what's left, and as I said, some locals are calling this a bad omen, saying something similar happened before the Spanish conquest, when the gods were angry. The Pacific Northwest is to evacuate. In Africa's Great Rift Valley sits Lake Kivu, calm, peaceful, and hiding a pretty terrifying secret. This lake is one of only 3 in the world known as a limnic lake, or killer lake. There's a ton of carbon dioxide and methane trapped under it, and if those gases suddenly escaped, say triggered by an earthquake or a landslide, the lake could literally erupt, unleashing this deadly cloud of gas across the surface. This has actually happened before, most famously in 1986 at Lake Nyos, killing 1,700 people in minutes. But Kivu is hundreds of times larger, and about 2 million people live nearby. Scientists are trying to pump gas out of the lake to reduce the risk, but it's a slow process, and the threat of an eruption is still very much there. If it were to happen, the gas could suffocate thousands of people. Over in the Canary Islands, there's a volcano called Cumbre Vieja on the island of La Palma. It erupted in 2021, but that wasn't the part people are really worried about. The big concern is what could happen in the future. Scientists have pointed out that the entire western side of the volcano is kind of loose, and if it ever collapsed into the ocean, it could cause a massive tsunami. I'm talking about a chunk of land the size of Manhattan sliding into the Atlantic and sending this wall of water toward the US East Coast. Some say the waves could be around 100 feet tall, hitting cities like New York, Miami, and Boston within hours. Other places like the UK, parts of Africa, and the Caribbean could get hit as well. Now, this may sound... Most people think of Yellowstone as a place to see geysers and bison, which is true, but underneath all that is something way more intense, a massive supervolcano. If this ever fully goes off, it could be one of the most destructive natural disasters in human history. The last time Yellowstone had a super eruption was around 640,000 years ago, and it covered huge parts of North America in ash. If that happens today, entire states could be buried under several feet of it. The ash alone could shut down air travel across the globe, mess with electronics, and cause food shortages as crops fail across the Midwest. And that's just the beginning. All that ash and gas in the atmosphere could set off a volcanic winter, and that's where temperatures drop and stay low for years because the sun is blocked out. Now, no one's saying it's going to erupt tomorrow, but Yellowstone's magma system is very much alive. It causes thousands of small earthquakes every year, which scientists track constantly. That doesn't mean an eruption is imminent, but it does mean we understand even less than we'd hoped. Bottom line, we can't really predict supervolcanoes with any real accuracy. If Yellowstone decides to blow, the fallout could change the world as we know it.
First, we have the orbit alternation. It is said that for 2024, Baba predicted the alteration in the very orbit of Earth. The orbits of bodies in the solar system are determined by gravitational forces and are always prone to change. However, such alterations typically take place in a very gradual way over long time periods, so anything more radical would have dramatic outcomes for us all. Now, this could cause us humans to have a lot of problems. If this happens over a short period of time, it could spark issues including climate disruption and a spike in radiation levels. Now, NASA is real serious about protecting our planet and doesn't want this to happen. In 2022, NASA successfully altered an asteroid's orbit that was heading towards Earth. All of us have a responsibility to protect our home planet. After all, it's the only one we have, said NASA Administrator Bill Nelson. This mission shows that NASA is trying to be ready for whatever the universe throws at us. NASA has proven that we are serious as a defender of the planet. This is a watershed moment for planetary defense of all humanity, demonstrating commitment from NASA's exceptional team and partners from around the world. So if the orbit alteration happens quickly and does cause chaos, NASA will do everything they can to help us, even though they might not be able to prevent it. Next up, we have climate change. Baba has made predictions about environmental issues such as climate change, and let me tell you, climate change is already here and affecting us poorly. Sea levels along the US coastline are projected to rise on average 10 to 12 inches in the next 30 years per NOAA. For context, that will be as much as the rise in sea level measured over the last 100 years. That is not good news for the 127 million Americans in coastal counties. Now, due to climate change, flooding is expected to become more frequent and severe. By 2050, scientists expect flooding to occur approximately 10 times more than it does today. Climate change is also altering ecosystem productivity, exacerbating the speed of invasive species, and changing how species interact with each other and with their environment. These changes are reconfiguring ecosystems in unprecedented ways, and if we don't start to try and fix all of this soon, we are just screwed. Now we have nuclear attacks. Baba anticipates a major country is conducting nuclear weapon tests or attacks this year. Now, who, where, and when has not been predicted, but there are a lot of viable options. The United States has approximately 4,000 nuclear warheads in its arsenal. Russia is testing bombs, and also newly designed nuclear weapons can create radioactive tsunamis that render targeted areas unlivable for decades. Rogue nations such as Iran and North Korea are desperately trying to obtain nuclear weapons, and according to CNBC, China is rapidly expanding its nuclear arsenal and could have 1,000 nuclear warheads by 2030, part of Beijing's ambitious military buildup. Now in 2021, humanity has about 13,410 nuclear weapons, which is too high for me, but now that it's 2024, I'm sure there's thousands more, and I just don't like that. Moving on to droughts. Okay, so she did not predict this for this year. This is something she's already predicted that's come true. Yep, you've heard that right. Some of her predictions have come true. Baba apparently predicted a number of extreme weather events in 2022. She prophesied that a number of large cities around the world would be hit by large-scale droughts and water shortages. Now that year, the UK had its driest July since 1935, officially declaring drought on August 12th. Meanwhile, other countries in Europe also faced drought, including France, Italy, and Portugal. Extreme droughts measured by surface soil moisture covered almost 50% of global land areas in 2022, marking the second most widespread year since 1980. In many places, these droughts were also accompanied by unprecedented heat waves. It was so shocking that a study titled Understanding and Attribution of Extreme Heat and Drought Events in 2022, Current Situation and Future Challenges, examined the events from a global perspective, shedding light on the causes and implications of these extreme weather phenomena. Now, hopefully this was just a one-time thing, but with climate change, anything can happen. Now let's talk about the floods. Again, these floods already happened, but it's still scary that she predicted these. She claimed that Australia and Asia would experience floods, and it was reported in 2022 that heavy rain across southeast Australia this month has forced thousands of people from their homes. Flooding has affected at least 16 rivers in the states of New South Wales and Victoria, as well as the island state of Tasmania. The flooding has resulted from heavy rain over areas with full catchments and soils still saturated by 2 years of wet La Nina summers. For the first time in decades, some dams are at capacity. Sydney has experienced its wettest year on record, while in other regions, century-old October rainfall records have been broken. In a single hour on October 7th, Melbourne received half its average monthly rainfall. Now that is just crazy. Then heavy monsoon rains and flash flooding ravaged several Southeast Asian countries, ending the lives of dozens of people, forcing thousands to flee their homes, and it damaged key agricultural areas. In October that year, it was said that intense rain was expected to continue throughout Thailand, where 59 of the country's 77 provinces had already been hit by floods, affecting about 450,000 homes and more than 100 hectares. So it seems like she was right again. Now we have solar storms. Baba Vanga is also believed to have predicted a powerful solar storm that would affect Earth's climate. In 2023, she predicted a terrible solar storm. Now, while solar activity is a lot more regular than you may think, there were multiple notable solar flares that occurred. X-class flares are big major events that can trigger planet-wide radio blackouts and long-lasting radiation storms. If you didn't know, there had been 12 X-class flares in 2023. Now my question is, why didn't anyone tell us about this? It's absolutely terrifying, and the fact that it happened 12 times is insane to me. Space weather experts at NASA and other agencies take this threat seriously, and they closely monitor the sun for potentially hazardous activity, but if a big enough storm or sun flare were to happen, it would put the world in absolute chaos, and that is not something I want to experience in my lifetime. Then there's earthquakes. Some interpretations suggest Baba has predicted significant natural disasters, including earthquakes. While we have gotten better at predicting earthquakes, that doesn't mean we know when all of them will happen or how big they will be. Now, when I hear about the possibility of a major earthquake, I always think of the San Andreas Fault. And if you're a dedicated viewer, you might know that I talk about this fault quite a lot when it comes to natural disaster videos because it's so scary. Now, the risk is currently concentrated on the southern section of the fault, aka the region around Los Angeles, because strong earthquakes have occurred relatively recently on the central 1857 and the northern 1906 segments of the fault, while the southern section has not seen any similar rupture for at least 300 years. That means it's due to rupture any day now. All the data suggests that the fault is ready for the next big earthquake, but exactly when the triggering will happen and when the earthquake will occur is unknown, which I don't like hearing about because it freaks me out. I mean, I live on the East Coast too, so I don't know why it scares me so much, but it really does. Now on to the ice caps melting. Baba said that from 2033 to 2045, the polar ice caps will melt, causing ocean levels to rise. But bad news, that is already happening to us. If emissions continue to rise unchecked, the Arctic could be ice-free in the summer by 2040. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that freaks me out. If this happens, bad things can start to happen. Less ice means less reflected heat, meaning more intense heat waves worldwide. But it also means more extreme winters. Then there's the issue of food. Polar vortexes, increased heat waves, and unpredictability of weather caused by ice loss are already causing significant damages to crops on which global food systems depend. This instability will continue to mean higher prices for food, and guys, I'm already struggling to buy groceries as it is. Now, this could also affect wildlife. If there's less sea ice, animals that depend on it for survival must adapt or die. Loss of ice and melting permafrost isn't good for polar bears, walruses, Arctic foxes, snowy owls, reindeer, and many other species. As they are affected, so are the other species that depend on them, in addition to people. Up next is attacks. Baba has claimed that there will be many attacks on the world in 2024. First of all, she claims there will be an assassination attempt on Vladimir Putin. He's not very well liked, so he has a lot of security, but it appears that he'll need to watch his back even more this year. As it said, he'll face an assassination attempt, not by an international agent, but someone from his own country. Still, Baba only predicted an attempt on Putin's life, so he'll probably survive. Then she said there'll be an attack on Europe, and Europe is supposedly set for an attack by extremists. Now, she didn't say where exactly in Europe these strikes would take place, so I'd just be overly cautious there. And lastly, we have volcanoes erupting. Baba has also predicted volcanic eruptions affecting various parts of the world. The Lake Toba supervolcano on the Indonesian island of Sumatra is currently home to the largest volcanic lake on Earth, formed 74,000 years ago when it last blew in the biggest eruption for 25 million years. It is estimated that around 2,800 cubic kilometers of volcanic ash and lava were thrown into the atmosphere, and now it may be about to erupt again. Now, this isn't the only supervolcano. Oh no. Now, the question about supervolcanoes, as it turns out, isn't whether one could destroy all life on Earth, it is when it will do it again. Now, around 200 million years ago, a supervolcano erupted with such insistent energy that 75% of the species on the planet were eradicated. It was so gigantic that it pulled apart North America and Africa and created the Atlantic Ocean in between. So could we have a supervolcano erupt this year? I hope not, because then we'd just all be doomed.
Kicking off our list is the awe-inspiring, yet daunting Yellowstone supervolcano, a colossal force of nature hidden in plain sight beneath the serene landscapes of Yellowstone National Park. This supervolcano is no ordinary geological feature. It harbors a massive magma chamber stretching over an estimated area of 3,472 square miles. The scale and power of this supervolcano are hard to comprehend. If it were to erupt, the consequences would be cataclysmic. We're talking about the ejection of over 1,000 cubic kilometers of rock and ash into the atmosphere, an event that could radically transform landscapes, devastate ecosystems, and disrupt human life on an unprecedented scale. This eruption has the potential to spew volcanic material with such force that it could blanket large parts of North America, affecting areas thousands of miles away from the epicenter. Not only this, but the enormous volume of ash and particles thrust into the atmosphere could significantly reduce sunlight reaching the Earth's surface, leading to what scientists term a volcanic winter. This scenario would not only lower global temperatures, but could also disrupt agriculture systems and food supplies, leading to far-reaching impacts on human societies and natural environments. While the likelihood of such an eruption in the near future remains low, the mere existence of such a powerful force beneath one of America's most beloved national parks is a humbling reminder of the dynamic and ever-changing nature of our planet. Mother Nature's really out here keeping us on our toes, alright? You never know what to expect. Next on our list is the looming threat of the Big One in the Cascadia Subduction Zone, a 620-mile fault line that runs along the Pacific Northwest. This region, encompassing parts of Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, is bracing for a potentially catastrophic earthquake. Geologists and seismologists, those are earthquake scientists, warn that this zone is not just overdue for a quake, but is capable of unleashing one with a magnitude of up to 9.0. Such a colossal seismic event could trigger devastating tsunamis, capable of inundating coastal areas with walls of water. The impact would extend far beyond the immediate shaking. We're talking about significant structural damage to buildings, bridges, and infrastructure, potentially cutting off essential services and disrupting millions of lives. Additionally, the aftermath could see a cascade of secondary disasters, including landslides and flooding, severely impacting the region's economy and environment. The Pacific Northwest's preparation and response plans are continuously evolving, as the potential for this seismic event poses quite a formidable challenge to the resilience of these communities. Next up, let's contemplate the potential havoc wreaked by a monster solar storm. Picture this: a colossal solar flare dwarfing our planet tenfold, unleashing torrents of electromagnetic radiation towards Earth. The scale is truly unimaginable. A tempest born from the sun, capable of engulfing our world in a maelstrom of charged particles. The consequences? Catastrophic. Such a storm could cripple satellites, rendering them inoperable and sending chunks of our advanced technology back to a pre-digital era. Bye-bye Starlink, okay? None of those little things, alright? They have no chance against a monster solar flare. Our power grids, the very backbone of our modern civilization, could face unprecedented outages, plunging vast regions into darkness for extended periods. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of living in unprecedented times. I want things to be very precedented, the day by day. This isn't merely about lights going out, it's about critical life support systems in hospitals, emergency services, and transportation networks all grinding to a halt. Communications would be severely disrupted, if not entirely severed, isolating communities and hindering disaster response efforts. The aftermath of such a storm wouldn't be measured in days or weeks, but potentially months of recovery as we strive to rebuild the pillars of our technologically driven society. The ripple effect on global economies, healthcare, and daily life is a sobering reminder of our vulnerability to the whims of solar activity. Alright? So let's all be nice to the sun. Say sorry. I don't know. I'm just up here saying shit. Now let's delve into the critical issue of the melting Antarctic ice sheet. As global temperatures continue to rise, largely due to human-induced climate change, the stability of the West Antarctic ice sheet is increasingly at risk. Scientists are particularly concerned about this region because much of the ice sheet rests on bedrock that is below sea level, making it vulnerable to warm ocean currents. If a significant portion of this ice sheet were to collapse, it could trigger a catastrophic rise in global sea levels, potentially by several meters. Such an event would have profound implications for coastal cities across the globe, exposing them to unprecedented flooding and erosion. It's not the last time I'm gonna say unprecedented, I'm just gonna warn ya. This scenario isn't just a distant possibility, it's a pressing concern that underscores the urgent need for effective climate action to mitigate these risks. The impact on human populations, ecosystems, systems and global weather patterns would be profound, reshaping coastlines and displacing millions of people. About halfway on our list, we have the threat posed by an undetected asteroid, straight out of a sci-fi horror movie. Despite the efforts of space agencies worldwide, which vigilantly monitor thousands of near-Earth objects, also called NEOs, the possibility of a surprise asteroid remains a haunting prospect. These celestial bodies, often hurtling through space at incredible speeds, can easily go unnoticed, especially if they're small or come from certain directions that are harder to observe, like from the direction of the sun, alright? It's really hard to look directly at it. The concern is not unfounded. Even a relatively small asteroid, undetected until it's too late, could unleash an energy equivalent to multiple nuclear bombs upon impact. But beyond localized devastation, such an impact could also inject vast amounts of dust and debris into the atmosphere, potentially triggering climactic changes on a global scale. These changes could disrupt weather patterns, affect food production, and have long-lasting environmental impacts. Next up, we delve into the daunting realm of Category 6 hurricanes. In a world where climate change is heating up our oceans, the once theoretical possibility of hurricanes surpassing the current Category 5 scale is becoming increasingly plausible. These supercharged storms, a notch above the highest level on the Saifir-Simpson hurricane wind scale, could pack up winds exceeding 200 miles per hour. As somebody who is in kilometers, that's even more kilometers. That's crazy. The implications are staggering. With such ferocious power, these hurricanes could cause unimaginable damage, dwarfing the destruction caused by their predecessors. Their increased intensity and frequency not only signal a profound shift in our planet's climate dynamics, but also pose a significant challenge to coastal cities, demanding measures in disaster preparedness and response. Next up, we have the haunting specter of an H5N1 avian influenza pandemic that looms as a significant global threat. This strain of bird flu is notorious for its high mortality rate in birds, and it has also caused severe illness and death in humans who have come into close contact with infected birds. The primary concern is the virus's potential mutation that could enable it to transmit easily between humans. Such a mutation could ignite a catastrophic pandemic, possibly more severe than what we will call Schmovid-19. The world has already witnessed the profound societal and economic disruptions caused by the panorama, and H5N1 panorama could present even greater challenges as our current vaccines and treatments might be less effective against this novel and potentially more viral strain. The global health community remains vigilant as the emergence of such a virus would require rapid response and international cooperation to prevent a disaster of unprecedented scale. There we go. In an era marked by drastic climactic shifts, the shadow of mega floods looms large. These are not your typical seasonal floods, they are colossal in scale, capable of submerging vast areas underwater for prolonged periods. Triggered by extreme weather patterns such as unprecedented rainfall or rapid melting of snow and ice, these deluges have the potential to reoccur, reminiscent of historical great floods. The impact of such events is profound and far-reaching. Entire regions could find themselves underwater, leading to catastrophic consequences for millions of people. Infrastructure, homes, and livelihoods could be washed away in an instant, leaving lasting scars on the affected communities. The environmental repercussions are severe, with ecosystems facing irreversible damage, threatening both biodiversity and land productivity. Next up, we have mega droughts. Prolonged megadroughts are a formidable climactic phenomenon characterized by their extensive duration, often spanning several decades and impacting vast geographical areas such as the southwestern United States. These relentless droughts would lead to acute water shortages, affecting both urban and rural communities. Water scarcity would not only disrupt daily life but also impact agriculture productivity, leading to crop failures and a significant significant strain on food supplies. The economic repercussions would be profound, affecting industries reliant on water and agriculture, and potentially leading to increased prices and shortages of foods and goods. Additionally, the environmental consequences would be severe, including the loss of biodiversity, increased wildfire risks, and the transformation of landscapes. And finally, let's discuss a global heatwave emergency. Okay, picture this. Major cities around the world grappling with consecutive days where temperatures would soar above 50 degrees Celsius, that's 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Such extreme heat would not only create a dire health crisis, with risks of heat stroke and dehydration skyrocketing, but also place an immense strain on power grids as millions turn on air conditioning for relief. The demand could lead to widespread blackouts, further exacerbating the crisis. The impact on wildlife and ecosystems would also be catastrophic. Urban wildlife, unaccustomed to such temperatures, would face severe challenges, and the heat could disrupt delicate ecological balances, leading to unforeseen consequences. In essence, a global heat wave of this magnitude would be an unprecedented event, testing the resilience of our cities, health systems, and the natural world.
It's no secret that Chile has unfortunately become home to many earthquakes over the years, including the cataclysmic rupture of the 9.5 magnitude earthquake that took place in 1960, in which roughly 560 to 620 miles of rock along the stretch of the Nazca tectonic plate broke apart. So you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, this was supposed to be a list of natural disasters for 2024. Well, have no fear. Or do, because it's predicted that another West Coast earthquake disaster is ready to go at any minute, with some referring to the inferred event as the Chilean megathrust. Not only this, but the ominously named megathrust is also predicted to be followed up by a devastating tsunami. Again, you're thinking, okay, that's terrible, but how does it translate to the end of the world? Well, you see, much like these questions, earthquakes are reoccurring, and action triggers action, meaning the more we have, the more we get. Now, for my Canadian friends out there who are thinking that because of the Canadian Shield they don't need to worry, remember that not only do earthquakes trigger earthquakes, but they can also cause erosion and even breakage to the tectonic plates beneath the Earth's surface. So who really knows how long that protection is gonna last? Next up, we have landslides, and I do apologize to the Stevie Nicks fans because no, I am not talking about Fleetwood Mac, but rather the movement of a massive amount of land, rock, or debris down a slope with the power to wipe out mountainous towns, islands, cities, and more. A recent study released by NASA in 2020 claims that the rising of the Earth's average temperature, along with excess rainfall, has put specifically Asia at extreme risk of landslides, with an increase in both frequency and magnitude. These events could cause a diminish in fresh water supply, a creation of landslide dams, which is debris piled up and blocking waterways, causing flooding. These events can also cause damage to many areas downstream of the origin site, even up to hundreds of miles away. If you live in a relatively flat area, you can breathe easy tonight, but maybe not that easy. You see, most of the world relies heavily on trade with Asian countries, so even if the landslides don't get us directly, who knows what it could do to the economy. Moving on to ecological catastrophe, aka ecosystem collapse. Now, it's debatable whether or not this particular event would or would not be considered a natural disaster, as it's largely due to humans' impact on the Earth, but seeing as it pertains to the loss of natural diversity on a global scale, I personally would classify it as such. You see, as we grow to meet the demands of our growing population, we are clearing lands and natural agriculture, causing a decline and displacement of many plants and animals. When this happens, certain populations decline, which can put the whole ecosystem out of whack. For instance, the decline in moose population in Canada has allowed more balsam fir saplings to live, as they're no longer being gobbled up by the giant creatures. Fir trees pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, so mathematically, more fir trees, less carbon dioxide. The balance of the Earth is disrupted, which in turn leads to changes in air quality, massive changes in plants and animal populations, and extreme weather disturbances, which very well might lead to our downfall. Speaking Speaking of extreme weather disturbances, next up we have wildfires. I've seen it, you've seen it, we've all seen it over the past few years. Wildfires have been everywhere, from California to Canada, all the way over to Australia, and everywhere in between. Scorched earth is on the rise. But the crazy part is, wildfires actually used to be a good thing. A forest's way of releasing valuable nutrients stored on the forest floor in order to regenerate plants and vegetation and create a highly lush and biodiverse environment. The problem is that they've gotten out of hand. Well, kind of. Of course, we recognize the tragedy of fires caused by the hands of humans and gender reveals, but the reason natural forest fires have become such a threat to communities lies largely to do with the fact that communities have become such a threat to forests. You see, as cities expand and move outwards, we take up more land, and eventually that land pushes into the domain of the forest, and therefore forest fires. This of course leads to disasters and tragedy within the directly affected communities, along with widespread decline in air quality as the fire spreads into unfamiliar territory and begins burning more than the natural native resources. Fire, now water. I feel like Avatar. Next up, we have floods. Whether they are due to rising water levels or torrential downpour, floods have the ability to devastate populated areas and displace millions of people from their homes, disrupting life on a local, national, and even international level. The countries affected contribute to the economic success of others. In 2023, in India alone, over 12 million people had to flee for their lives after deadly floods and landslides devastated homes in Nepal and Bangladesh. And we are seeing this happen more frequently, whether it be due to climate change and rising sea levels, or a decrease in biodiversity leading to a change in air quality causing heavy rainfall. Some other countries who are at high risk for flooding include Nigeria, the Philippines, Yemen, Kenya, Chad, Japan, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Somalia. Taking it down south for this next one, we have Caribbean tsunamis. So I actually grew up on a small island in the Caribbean, and while we did do fire drills, we actually did earthquake and tsunami drills way more. When the alarm went off for the earthquake drill, we would take shelter under tables or door frames, and then, because generally tsunamis follow soon after, the entire student body would gather outside and climb to the top of a small nearby mountain. Now mind you, it was a small school of about 250 people, but it still took over half the day. In recent years, however, tsunamis have become even more prevalent as the rate of earthquakes increase and sea levels rise. But there's actually another completely different reason that the Caribbean specifically is currently under threat from megawaves, and that reason is a mega unstable volcano located in the Canary Islands. The volcano, located on the island of La Palma, is under close watch as it's dangerously unstable and has the capacity to plunge into the ocean at pretty much any time. According to Dr. Simon Day of the Benfield Hazard Research Centre at the University College of London, such an instance would cause a mega tsunami that could wipe out many island nations. Alright, it's about time to get interstellar up in here, as the next ultimate catastrophe is the collapse of the vacuum, like the literal vacuum of space. So think of our existence as a balloon that's full of air. The air inside of the balloon pushes against this parameter, keeping it full, and in our case, keeping the universe, and specifically Earth, inhabitable. The vacuum in this example would be the empty space. Now, if that vacuum were to collapse, all of the empty space would begin to disappear, as anything that's not empty space, example people, plants, animals, and things, would be pulled together in a giant mass, making that empty space smaller and smaller until it eventually collapses in on itself, thus ending our very existence swiftly and absolutely. On a lighter note, but not really, another possibility for the end of days is the reversal of Earth's magnetic field. You see, every few 100,000 years, the Earth's magnetic field decreases to almost nothing for perhaps a century, then later reappears with the North and South Pole flipped. Here's the thing. The last time this happened was 780,000 years ago, so like, we're due. In fact, in the past century alone, the strength of our magnetic field has already decreased by 5%. Why is this absolutely terrifying? Well, the Earth's magnetic field deflects particle storms, cosmic rays from the sun, and even subatomic particles from deep space. As this protection decreases, we run an increased risk of these particles and rays striking the Earth's atmosphere and further eroding the already dwindling ozone layer. Not to mention, many animals actively rely on the Earth's magnetic field for survival, so who knows what impact this may have on biodiversity. Next up, we have mass insanity. Natural, maybe. Disaster, 100%. I mean, humans are naturally occurring carbon life forms, so I felt like I had to include this one. You see, while globally the human population is improving physically, mental health has been on a steady and worryingly rapid decline. In fact, it is predicted that depression will become the second leading cause of death and loss of productivity, right behind cardiovascular disease. So, why is this happening? Well, believe it or not, it's actually a combination of increased lifespan, leaving more time to experience loneliness, and overloading the human brain. This dynamic duo has not only led to an increase in depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues, but also fear-mongering, complacency, pessimism, lack of motivation, as well as an uprising in cults and erratic behavior. Honestly, pretty scary to think about what will become of Earth if we keep on heading down this road. And in our number one spot, you know I had to do it, we have alien invasion. Okay, before you run to the comments and absolutely annihilate me for including this on the list, I'm not actually talking about humanoid extraterrestrials. I'm talking about viruses, specifically ones that span outside of their native range. You see, alien bacteria and viruses have the power to topple agriculture, destroying forests and farmlands alike. It's not just human health we have to worry about. The likelihood of this happening? Well, I'll be honest, alien bacteria and viruses are vastly underrepresented when it comes to ecology studies, which in simple terms just means we don't really know. While it could be a far out possibility, it could also well be a very imminent and very serious threat to life as we know it. And the fact that viruses and diseases are so easily widespread, what with travel by car and train and boats and planes and whatever else there is, I'd say there's a pretty safe bet that it could happen. Again.
Starting off our list are solar flares. Most energy from a solar flare is radiated away as ultraviolet and X-ray light. However, the intense energy of a flare can also heat up nearby gas in the sun's atmosphere, launching enormous blobs of charged particles known as coronal mass ejections (CMEs) out into space. Now, if that happens, radio and radar systems around the world can black out, and electrical grids may become overloaded and lose power, which would cause absolute chaos. Now, some experts fear that a sufficiently large CME could create an internet apocalypse by overloading undersea internet cables and leaving parts of the world without web access for weeks or months, which is such a scary thought. Long-standing blackouts could potentially cost America alone $41.5 billion a day. Not to mention, with the electrical grid down, the economy would be greatly destabilized. Now, satellites and space stations which orbit beyond the protection of Earth's atmosphere could also be debilitated by the renegade radiation of CMEs. Now, space weather experts at NASA and other agencies take this threat seriously and closely monitor the sun for potentially hazardous activity. Next up, we have the Toba supervolcano. Lake Toba supervolcano on the Indonesian island of Sumatra is currently home to the largest volcanic lake on Earth, formed 74,000 years ago when it last blew in the biggest eruption for 25 million years. It is estimated that around 2,800 cubic kilometers of volcanic ash and lava were thrown into the atmosphere, and it may be about to erupt again. As with any super eruption, huge quantities of ash and sulfur dioxide produced can have a devastating effect on the global climate. But a number of factors make the prospect of a Toba super eruption much more intimidating than, say, one at Yellowstone. Toba is located on the densely populated island of Sumatra, home of over 50 million vulnerable people, and is only 40 kilometers from the Indian Ocean, in which catastrophic tsunamis would certainly be generated. Additionally, reports of volcanic gases and heating of the ground surface have led to suggestions that the volcano may again be waking up. Now, if it happened again, it would blacken the sky, send temperatures plummeting, destroy crops globally, and produce huge tsunamis. It would likely end the lives of millions immediately and many, many more over the course of a few years. Moving on to the Helina slump. A great danger is posed by the possible collapse of the southern portion of Kilauea volcano on the Big Island of Hawaii. The south slope is geologically unstable. Called the Helina slump, this could drop 12,000 cubic kilometers of rock into the Pacific Ocean, generating a mega tsunami that would go around the Pacific Ocean and reach the western seaboard of North America in a matter of hours, overpowering coastal communities. There is evidence that a similar collapse of the nearby Mauna Loa around 12,000 years ago generated a tsunami with a run-up height of over 400 meters. Now, even as recently as 1975, movement of the Helina slump generated a smaller yet destructive tsunami that reached California. Given that the slump is continually active and moving, it might only take a jolt from an earthquake in the tectonically active state to set in motion this catastrophic chain of events. Now, the scary thing is that we can't do anything to stop it, and this threat will be looming over us. Now let's discuss gamma ray bursts. Gamma rays are the most dangerous forms of radiation. Gamma ray bursts likely result from the merging of two dying stars and can travel through almost anything, so that is not good for us humans. The event generates powerful beams of energy, firing charged particles into space in a spectacular surge of light. Now, if Earth were to be in the path of a gamma ray burst, radiation would destroy our atmosphere and produce nitrogen oxides, a gas that would eradicate the ozone layer. Without the ozone layer, the sun's ultraviolet rays would reach the surface unimpeded, wiping out the plankton in the ocean that produces oxygen to the atmosphere and disrupting the food chain, while causing other serious effects such as skin cancer. Presently, mechanisms for this generation of gamma ray burst emissions are not fully understood, so we just have to hope that one strong enough doesn't wipe us out. Now we have the San Andreas Fault. The San Andreas Fault is a continental right lateral strike slip transform fault that extends roughly 750 miles through the Californias. It forms the tectonic boundary between the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. Now, a study found that the risk of a large earthquake here may be increasing more rapidly than scientists had previously believed. The risk is currently concentrated on the southern section of the fault, aka the region around Los Angeles, because strong earthquakes have occurred relatively recently on the central 1857 and northern 1906 segments of the fault, while the southern section has not seen any similar rupture for at least 300 years. Now, if or when it ruptures, it would be strongly felt and potentially cause significant damage throughout much of Southern California. All the data suggests that the fault is ready for the next big earthquake, but exactly when the triggering will happen and when the earthquake will occur is unknown, which is one of the scariest parts. Now we have the North Sea tsunami. The North Sea may seem an unlikely place for a devastating tsunami, but climate change has led to concern that a submarine landslide in the region might lead to just this. Scientists have suggested that over 6,000 years ago, a sharp sea level rise attributed to a changing climate and the rapid melting of ice, and it added weight to the submarine glacial deposits at the edge of the Norwegian continental shelf, destabilizing them and causing a 300-kilometer long landslide. This generated a tsunami that reached heights of up to 20 meters in the Shetland Islands, 10 in the Norwegian coast, and 6 meters off the northern and western coast of Scotland. Now, should Earth experience such rapidly warming climate again, and experience the associated melting of the Greenland and/or West Antarctic ice sheets, a similar event might as well be possible, which today would affect the coastal populations of Scotland and Norway and perhaps even London. Onto the Cascadia Big One. At the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, just off the west coast of North America, and running from Northern California to Vancouver Island, is a subduction zone, a place where the Pacific Ocean floor is being forced beneath the North American landmass. Now, the rate of movement of the ocean floor here is currently just 40 millimeters a year, but the upper part of the system is currently stuck, meaning that the North American plate is being compressed. At some point, the pressure being built up has to be released, and this will be in the form of a massive earthquake, perhaps up to a magnitude of 9. This could cause a collapse of the coastal region of up to 2 meters and a possible horizontal displacement of 30 meters. Now, shortly after the intense shaking subsides, the coastal community will be struck by a tsunami that can make the 2011 Japanese wave look small. Around 7 million people live in this region, from Vancouver through Seattle to Tacoma and Portland. Scientists have calculated that in the last 10,000 years, the region has suffered 41 large earthquakes, occurring with an average interval of 244 years, and the last was a magnitude 9, and that was 315 years ago, so this could happen at any time. Next up is that an asteroid hits Earth. On February 15, 2013, a fireball streaked across the sky over Russia and exploded in a window-shattering airburst. Now, it was nearly a disaster, as the ground strike may have ended the lives of tens of thousands of people. Hours after the event, a space rock 3 times larger threaded the space between Earth and its artificial satellites. Now, had this asteroid struck a densely populated location like New York, it would have destroyed Midtown instantly, blasted down surrounding skyscrapers, and rained firestorm-spawning meteors for hours. Now, short-term death tolls might have reached the millions. Now, of course, water covers 71% of Earth, and many large inland regions remain sparsely populated. Thus, in the rare case such a massive rock actually hit Earth, it would stand a small chance of striking a population center. But a nation wrecker or even a planet killer could come knocking someday, perhaps sooner than we'd like to think. Now we have a megathrust earthquake. On April 1st, 2014, a magnitude 8.2 earthquake occurred 97 kilometers off the northwest coast of Chile, causing landslides and a tsunami to hit the coast. This earthquake created the possibility for an even larger earthquake for Chile in the near future due to the location of the earthquake. Now, the earthquake originated from the subduction zone, where one tectonic plate, the Nazca Plate, is plunging underneath another, the South American Plate. This subduction zone lies within the Ring of Fire, an arc in the Pacific containing 75% of the world's active volcanoes, which causes many of the world's seismic activity. When a tectonic plate moves under another, faults can come under severe amounts of stress, and any release of tension causes seismic activity, namely earthquakes. Now, the April 2014 earthquake was a megathrust earthquake, or a major earthquake caused by the release of tension from a subduction zone. Now, it only relieved 33% of the tension on the faults, leaving the rest to be relieved in the near future. And last on our list is black holes. Our galaxy is full of black holes, dozens of miles wide. Their gravity is so strong they swallow everything. Now, based on such observations and even more theoretical arguments, researchers guesstimate there are about 10 million black holes in the Milky Way. Now, if a normal star were moving towards us, we'd know it, but with a black hole, there is little warning. Assuming that black holes are randomly distributed throughout the galaxy and that there really are a few hundred million of them present, this likely means that the closest black hole to Earth is only around 40 to 80 light years away. Now, if a black hole contacts the Earth, of course it will swallow us. But we don't need to be swallowed in order to suffer catastrophic consequences. If a black hole simply passes very close by the Earth, it would cause what's known as a tidal disruption event, an event where the black hole's gravitational influence on the closer side of the Earth is so much stronger than the farther side of the Earth that it actually begins ripping our planet apart. Similarly, the top side of Earth would be pulled down relative to the center, while the bottom side gets pulled upward. What I'm pretty much saying is the gravitational and atomic bonds holding Earth together could be shattered, transforming our planet from a solid sphere into a thin, stretched debris stream that looks like a piece of spaghetti. Now, in fact, astronomers have named this exact process spaghettification because of the stretching effects that black holes have.